How's it going, guys? So you guys will notice that this episode, as well as our last episode that we did, are shorter episodes, and we're not really doing our normal format of what we usually do here, where we, do our icebreaker questions and our movie trailers and stuff like that. Part of the reason why is because me and Fuzzy and Past Morning have all been really sick this past week, and as you can tell by my voice, probably I'm still kind of feeling it. So we haven't really gotten the chance to get together and do a big thing, but we still wanted to do something for you guys. So we are doing a brief discussion about the movie Us today.
Through Discord app.
Yeah, through Discord. We're not meeting together. We're not catching each other's germs and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Cuties.
So, yeah, no cooties for us. So yeah, we're going to just kind of do a brief discussion on Us. It's going to be a shorter episode today. So just bear with us, and hopefully we'll have some good insight on this movie for you guys. Now, if you guys don't know, Us was a movie that came out a couple weeks ago, and it's the new Jordan Peele horror movie, which for those of you guys who've seen Get Out, it's the same idea. It's the same director. And he's even said that this is kind of like a pseudo sequel, like it takes place in sort of the same universe, he says. And it's a good, intense horror movie for what's going on here, and we're going to discuss sort of the ins and outs of what we liked and didn't like about it. So, Fuzzy, your first thoughts of this movie?
Well, when Ambrose first showed me this trailer a few weeks back, which you can go back and watch our first reactions about it.
Plug in right there. Woo!
Yes, plug. I was actually really excited because the horror genre has been pretty dead lately. There really hasn't been anything good coming out. And as I mentioned before, I only watched 30 seconds of the trailer before when they started playing the rap music. I'm thinking, oh god, this is one of those family-friendly, feel-good movies. But I went to the movie theaters, after I was hyped for the movie, of course, after watching the trailer, and I was really excited. And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. There are some things I'm not too happy about, but
Hold your horses, man. We'll get to that eventually.
Mm-hmm. But I still liked it. I'm still going to go out and buy it when it comes out. And I've already decided I'm going to put this in my top 50 favorite movies.
Oh, well, that's pretty high praise coming from you.
What about you, Ambrose?
Well, for one, I know I've mentioned it before on some episodes we've talked about before, but I, for one, am not super into horror movies as a whole. They're not really my style. I don't really tend to get scared by horror movies that much, because for me, when it comes to horror movies, I can't really seem to break the reality kind of type thing. Like, to me, if I watch a horror movie, I realize I'm not in any real danger, so it's hard for me to get into that mindset where, hey, I'm actually scared of this. But some horror movies I can really get behind, and I think, hey, these are some really good, interesting ways to go about it. And so a movie like this that's definitely different from your usual horror movie formula, I can really get behind. And I really enjoyed Get Out when that came out too. So seeing the new sort of thing that Jordan Peele was doing, I immediately was like, cool, that should be good. With that being said, I think it's important to mention that there is a thing out there called the I can't think of exactly what it's called off the top of my head, but there's like a sophomore movie curse, quote unquote, which usually refers to big directors who've been really successful on their first movie. In fact, Jordan Peele won an Oscar for Get Out, which was his first movie ever directed. So that tells you right there how good it was. Mm-hmm. But there's sort of a thing where their second movie ends up not being as good, and I kind of felt that this time, which obviously I'll get into when we discuss the ins and outs and the goods and the bads and all that stuff. All in all, though, I'd say this is still a solid movie. So with that being said, I'm sorry, what?
It would be really interesting because I didn't see Get Out but I kind of felt that Get Out was a little bit too political for my liking. And I thought,
it's interesting that you say that, because the trailer for Get Out looked like it was going to be political, but in the movie itself actually ended up not being political at all. Like, there is, when I first saw the trailer for Get Out, there was a whole thing where it looked like it was going to be, oh, this is a movie about racism, quote unquote, or whatever. And then when you look at it, you're like, it's kind of the opposite of that. And it's actually a really solid movie that's not even political at all. It kind of is, but not in the same way that you think of when you think of a movie like that the trailer sort of seemed to go with. So with that being said, let's jump into our discussion. Fuzzy, what do you think about the plot of Us?
Now, I enjoyed this movie, but I do kind of feel like it did suffer from some pacing issues and a desire to run its pad time with nonsensical crap. The thing is, I kind of felt it was a little bit annoying when we returned to the scene of the doppelgangers and the family just sitting there at the living room staring at each other. Honestly, I kind of feel like they could cut the movie by 30 minutes because around the 50-minute mark, you meet the doppelgangers and you realize, shit, there's still like an hour and 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. The pacing does seem a little off, but in some regards, I almost felt like that kind of helped the movie in certain places. Like there's certain parts where I could see where you're talking about, like, oh, that kind of just happened a little fast, but I feel like it was with the tension of the movie, it kind of worked in some places.
No, this would tie in with the cinematography and and the sound proportions later. But I feel they did a really good job building suspense within the first 50 minutes. But after they meet the doppelgangers, I kind of felt like the suspense was a little bit gone and that it became more of a slasher than anything else. But as I said, I really did enjoy this movie. I was actually going to go to the theaters today and actually rewatch it again because at our movie theater, tickets are half off for all showings all times on Tuesdays.
It's true. It's true.
And I'm going to be one of the first people to buy when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. So I'm going to give The Plot a 7.5. What about you?
So those of you who have kept up with our podcast, you'll know that I'm generally the guy isn't very critical of movies. I'm the one who like, oh yeah, I loved it, I liked it, blah blah blah, whatever, all that stuff.
Well, there has to be at least one critic.
This one though, I'm a little more critical on. Now this movie, I thought the plot was really good, like really solid for the first half of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first half where they're building up the suspense, you know, the beginning of the movie where, and obviously I'm not going to spoil too much for you guys, but you know, the beginning of the movie shows the little girl, you know, she's at the carnival with her parents, and she's, you know, wandering off on her own and all that kind of stuff. You're like, okay, this is doing a really good job of like getting you thinking, why is this happening? You know, and then the whole thing with when she's grown up with her family and all this stuff, you're like, okay, I can see what you're doing here. You're really building tension. And the whole, and this is where me and you were going to differ a little bit. The whole home invasion thing they did where the doppelgangers show up and like break into the house and stuff like that, I thought that was phenomenally well done.
No, it was.
Yeah, that brought the tension to a peak. Like, you're like, what the hell is happening? Especially, like, and this is where, like, you know, I said the pacing thing, I think, like, it kind of works in this regard. Because you see, you know, they notice the doppelgangers sitting out on the street. And they're just like, oh, well, if you wanted to go, then we could go, blah, 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 whatever. And then they just start rushing into the house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in most horror movies, you wouldn't really have something happening that quick. You'd kind of play it out and, like, you know, have the sort of menacing, slow build to it. But I feel like when they just like pushed it, they're like, oh, that's really good, that's solid. Like that brought the tension to a height. Now after that is where I felt like the movie started going downhill a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
After they originally get away from the house, this is where it feels like different plot points got kind of thrown into the movie that if, you know, maybe if they were explained better as to why they're in there, probably would have done well to make the story. But I feel like the rest of the plot points they threw in weren't really very well developed. For example, beginning of the movie, you see they're doing the whole TV commercials thing to show that it takes place in 1986, I think it was like the beginning of the movie. And then they showed the commercial for the Hands Across America thing. You know, everybody links hands and all this kind of stuff. And you think, oh, well, that's going to be a critical plot point later. And spoiler alert, it does. But the problem is it does not do a well enough job to explain what the significance of that was.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other plot points that I can't get into because it'll be spoiler territory and I don't want to spoil things for you. But a lot of the plot points towards the latter half of the movie just felt like they put way too much in and didn't explain anything of any of them. Including, and this is like the big kicker to me, there's that final plot twist at the very end of the movie. They're like, which is like a big reveal, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. But to me, the plot twist kind of fell flat because to me, it didn't really seem like it changed the story at all.
No.
Like, plot twists are supposed to be like, oh, that's some new development that we didn't know was happening, blah, 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 whatever. Like, this didn't really change the story at all. So first half of the movie, when they're doing the build up, the whole family thing, and then the break-in of the house, I thought was really well done, really suspenseful, did a really good job making me feel intense, and all the jokes and stuff they had put in there to break the tension I thought were really well done. After that, though, the movie really suffers, in my opinion. So honestly, I can't really give this movie better than a 5 out of 10.
And that's why I said that they could probably cut the movie by 30 minutes or so, because after that moment of them breaking in, it does kind of seem to drop off. It just drops off the cliff and goes,
Now, I mean, to be fair, I still really enjoyed this movie, and I think even with the weaknesses it has, it's still a solid movie there. And I actually ended up watching after I watched the movie Us, I went on and there's this YouTube channel that I follow called New Rock Stars.
Shout
Little
out.
plug there for them. I mean, they're not sponsoring us or anything, but I feel like I should plug them in there. Where they look at movies and they analyze little plot details and talk about like, oh, these are the things you've missed in this movie. And there's quite a few things that they talk about in there that kind of make out like new parts of the movie that you didn't quite realize were there the first time, and it kind of makes everything make a little bit more sense. So I feel like if I were to go and watch the movie again, which I might do, I might have a better appreciation for it, and I might be able to follow some of the other plot points a little bit better. But where it stands right now after one viewing, I can't give it better than a 5 out of 10 because honestly, second half of the movie just kind of fell apart. Still a good solid movie. It just I can't do better than that. It felt the end of it kind of like I didn't understand where they were going for.
But yeah, I agree with that element that you've mentioned and all that. I mean, I'm giving it a 7.5.
So anyways, yeah, like I said, I feel like it can't really do much better than a 5 out of 10. If I go see it again and I end up, changing my mind, I'll happily say straight up, hey, I was wrong about this movie and it's better than I thought. Or, if it ends up being worse than I thought and I still don't understand it, I'll say that too. But right now it's about a 5 out of 10.
I think this is a movie that you may have to watch a second or a third time, which I plan to do because it kind of really doesn't answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. In fact, in the movie itself, it almost asks more questions than it answers to some degree. Like, when we discussed the trailer a few weeks ago, I talked about how the trailer doesn't give anything away. And in that regard, it makes you interested in what's going to happen in the movie. And then the movie
doesn't answer.
While it does answer some of those questions, it doesn't answer all of them. And then it also piles on new stuff that kind of like, oh, well, what does that have to do with this over here? So anyways, with that little bit of a spiel out of the way, how would you rate the cinematography of this one?
Well, for the cinematography and lighting, I'm going to say that there's quite a lot of eerie shots within this movie, like when they were standing outside the house and when they were in the city holding hands, and a lot of extreme close-ups of like the doppelganger and the boy in the closet and then Red and the mom itself. I mean, some of those are really pretty eerie, and I'm not positive if they used green screen technology to capture the actors and they just filmed in front of it. I mean, it probably would have been really weird to stand and stare at a blank screen directly for many shots, but if they did use green screen technology, they really delivered the effect of two people in the same shot seamlessly to make it feel believable. And when it comes to lighting, again, they did a really good job portraying how dark, illuminating the dark ambience of this movie should have been.
Yeah, no, I can agree with what you're saying there. Yeah, I feel like the green screen would almost have to be necessary in that regard, because it's like, otherwise, how are they going to do what they did in a lot of the movie? So I feel like in that regard, yeah, the green screen probably has to be.
Well, I'm not even sure if they use green screen. They may have used CGI. I'm just...
True.
If I was someone directing this movie, this is the tactic I would have used, but...
I would have cloned them.
Yes.
And used the clones as that's the only way to get authenticity.
But I'm going to rate it an 8.
All right, so yeah, based on what you're saying, I feel like we really agree on this one. Normally, I'm not a fan of dark scenes in movies. Like, if it's hard for me to see what's happening on screen, I lose interest in what's happening. And in a lot of movies, the darkness is like important because obviously it's to build tension. Like in the old school Friday the 13th movies and all that stuff, they're all about having it dark outside because that's how you build the mood and build the suspense. But if it gets too dark and I can't see what's happening effectively, then I don't see the point. Because at that point, I don't care what's happening anymore because I can't see it. But in this movie, I think they used the darkness in a really good way. They didn't make it too dark that I couldn't see what was happening, but they made it dark enough that I was eerie as to what was going on, and I was really confused, not by what was happening, just because like I didn't know what to think in some regards. And so the lighting in this movie was done really well. Again, though, this is where the big kicker happens. About halfway through, seems like they kind of lost their budget on cinematography. Not cinematography. Cinematography is good all the way. But when the movie takes place in the dark, like the beginning, when the little girl's in the Hall of Mirrors and she first meets her doppelganger, the darkness there is like, that's intense. Like, what's going on here? And then the part that was also in the trailer where it shows everybody in the house staring at each other, like the darkness there was used really well. Well, then after they eventually move on from the house, it's just all suddenly bright again. And it, like, I don't know, brightness in a horror movie is kind of hard to do in certain ways because, like, yeah, you want it to be, it's obviously daylight sometimes, but it takes away from the tension a little bit. So I think when they made it like really bright and like daylight the rest of the day, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of broke the tension for me a little bit. However, that part where they're right before the final like showdown, where Red is like hiding like the car, like she's pushed up against the car hiding herself and you don't see her there, that part got me. Like that was a good tense moment right there. So in that way I feel like that was done really well. All in all though, I don't think the lighting suffered as much as the plot did towards the end. I think it still does really well, throughout the whole movie with tension. So I'd say probably good 7 out of 10 for this one, just because the beginning was great with the cinematography and the lighting, and then while it dipped in the end, it didn't quite take away from it for me. So I'd say 7 out of 10. So as far as casting goes in this movie, I thought it was actually a really good cast. I feel like when I was first watching the movie, I thought the father was going to be the main character, because I kind of got that vibe a little bit. And the father is played by Winston Duke, the same guy who played M'Baku in Marvel Cinematic Universe and Black Panther and Infinity War, which I thought was really cool. It's kind of a guy who I'm not really familiar, but I liked him in those movies, so I was willing to say, all right, this is kind of cool. And then I'm probably going to butcher her name, but Lupita Nyong'o, the chick who actually is the main character, she is also in the MCU playing Black Panther's girlfriend or whatever in Black Panther.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that was her. If I'm not mistaken. But anyways, so for one thing, the casting choice of having the main cast be black actors, I thought that was really well done. And that's kind of Jordan Peele's sort of his signature there. Get Out was all about black characters and stuff like that too. And so in that regard, I felt like it was done really well. And these were good actors to play. However, there were certain parts where it felt like the acting was a little bit wonky. And I'm not sure if it was meant to be the characters themselves were just really weird. Like with the main chick, you understand by the end of the movie why she was being weird. But the son, for example, he seemed really bizarrely acted, and I can't tell if that's because the son was just weird or if the acting just wasn't up to par with the rest of them, I'd say. But all in all, I'd say the casting choice was good. I'd say the cast did a really good job of cracking jokes and making breaking and making tension in that way. So I'd give a solid 8 out of 10 on casting, honestly. I think it was a really good cast. I think they did a really well job of working together and building suspense together. Not to mention that they were all basically playing two roles, essentially.
Exactly.
So I think it was really well done. I give it 8 out of 10.
I'm going to be giving it a 6 because a lot of the characters did kind of seem a little bit odd in that regard. Spoiler alert, kind of. At the end of the movie, I was kind of expecting her son to be one of the doppelgangers because there was that little bit of suspense at the very ending.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about. And like I said, in the sense that the son was acted really weird, it kind of almost led you to believe that might be the case, but it just doesn't happen, So I get what you're saying on that.
But I'm going to give the casting a 6.5.
All right, yeah, it's still a solid thing, I'd say. So what was next?
Sound design.
Oh yeah, sound design. So what about sound design, Fuzzy? What do you think of the sound design?
Now, as Ambrose mentioned when he shared this trailer, and I kind of share that same sentiment, but I'm not really big into rap music. I mean, if you like it, more power to you. If you don't like it, then hey. But I felt it was a little bit strange, but also kind of unique that they incorporated the song from the trailer into the movie. Although it did kind of seem like they did loop like the first two measures of that song before it started to get eerier and eerier. But I kind of thought it was interesting how they incorporated. Not many movies do that when it comes to trailers. And also, I gotta give credit to the actress. I'm not gonna say her name because I'll probably butcher it worse than Ambrose. But I was reading somewhere that the way that she was talking can actually really damage your vocal cords. So I'm going to give really big props there.
Yeah, interesting thing about that, when I read too that when she's talking as her doppelganger character, she actually took inspiration from a real life condition that causes someone to speak in a croaked voice with a lot of stops in their voice, which was actually really done way because it's a doppelganger, so they're not meant to be real people, quote unquote, so they wouldn't be good at speaking. And then they kind of took that, and she basically said, hey, this is something that we can do to build the tension, but also give a good character trait. So I get what you're saying.
So, I mean, I gotta give her props. She did a really fantastic job. And
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be killer on your vocal cords.
I would hate to have to do that myself. Spend 8 hours in a studio, if not longer, talking in that deep, grumbly voice. But I'm going to give it a 7. What are your thoughts on it?
So, so you mentioned how the rap music. For me, I'm not crazy about rap music, but I'm not opposed to it. Like, I like some rap, mainly just Eminem, quote unquote, like is one of my guys I like. But no, I'm not.
Well, everybody likes Eminem.
Right. I mean, I'm all right with rap music though. But what I think was a really nice touch, not just with like the rap music at the beginning of the movie, but spoiler alert, there's a part where they're at the friend's house, right?
Yeah.
And the friend's doppelgangers show up, and I love the part where the wife says,
Alexa, call the police.
Alexa, call the police. Right. Well, it wasn't Alexa though. It was like or something else. It was some other name. But and then the little box says, "Sure, playing
Fuck the Police
by NWA." And I was like, "Oh, okay." That was nice. And then like so then the whole time this stuff's going on,
I laughed my ass off so hard in the theater when that happened.
Yeah. So the whole time that music is playing, and it's really done. And then obviously that they do Beach Boys, which is also really cool, or Beastie Boys. I think Beach Boys. I forget. I get confused sometimes. But anyways, so in certain ways, the music like has a good juxtaposition to what's happening on the screen, and sometimes it doesn't always work. But in this case, I think they did a really good job of making that happen. However, I feel like it went on a little bit too long sometimes. Like the fact, like the songs that they chose to play, it felt like they just kept on going and going, and it really wasn't like the joke was like it was played for a joke. And then it just kind of kept on going. And it's like, all right, we get it. You could stop playing now. We're trying to focus on the rest of the stuff over here. But that's not necessarily bad. I just feel like it might have been overdone a little bit. And again, just like you, I got to give props to Lupita Nyong'o and her voice as Red, just because that was crazy intense. I can't imagine how much strain that would have had to been on somebody to do that. And I also love Gabe's doppelganger's just growl that he does, just like the roar that he does. Not able to speak in full sentences, he's just like rah. And I don't know why I thought that was funny, but I loved that. So honestly, as far as sound design goes, it's got to be an 8 out of 10 for me, just because the music, I thought, even though it did go on a little bit longer than it should have, it helped cause a good juxtaposition with the rest of the movie, and the voices and all that kind of stuff. They were done really well. So 8 out of 10 for me.
Alrighty. And what about the rewatchability?
So as we mentioned before with the plot, this is definitely a movie that I feel like I have to rewatch, because there were certain parts of the story that I didn't feel really got explained well enough. And there's a lot of movies like this where like they almost require a second and even a third viewing sometimes to fully appreciate them. Because who are we kidding? When you go to the movie the first time, you're not really looking for details. You're just kind of enjoying the movie,
And munching on your popcorn.
Right. You're not really looking for all the small details. And then after you come home and you start thinking about stuff, you're like, oh, there's some interesting things. And especially with movies like this, where the plot is so intricately designed, there's stuff that like you almost want to go back and see if you can find hint. Like, what kind of hints can you see of what's going on here? So it's definitely one that I plan on rewatching a couple times. I'll probably end up buying it on DVD when it comes out, if anything, just so I can put it next to my Get Out movie and have like a set going on there. But I definitely plan on rewatching it, and I kind of really want to get a feel for like little hints that I can find in the movie that might kind of explain things a little bit better. So as far as rewatchability goes, I say 7 out of 10. You easily got to watch it at least twice to fully experience what you're going on. And unlike video, like we mentioned in the video game pod, sometimes a game where you have to replay the game in order to fully appreciate it isn't always good. I feel like with movies it's a little different, because you're not spending $60 to go see a movie.
Well, not only that, it's a different type of entertainment, really.
Right. Movies are designed to be able to just pop in and rewatch whenever you want. So in a movie that's designed to like maybe watch it 2 or 3 times to fully appreciate it, I can get behind something like that a little bit better than I could with like a video game, for example. So I think for like rewatchability, I think I said it already. 7 out of 10 was what I said, and I feel like that's a good score, because like I said, I plan on rewatching it at least a couple more times to fully embrace what's happening here. Especially if it changes my mind about the plot and makes it better, in my opinion. Hey, I'm all for it.
Now, I'm actually rating this a little bit higher, and it may drop down a little bit after I watch it a second or a third time, but I'm going to be rating it a 9. Because this movie doesn't have a lot of answers to questions. Maybe this movie was designed to make you think and not really even offer answers to what's really going on. But I know that I've said it once, and I know that Ambrose said it. I plan on picking it up on DVD and probably watching it again in theaters because it is really good despite some of our complaints with it.
And I feel like, you know, like I said, yeah, I complained about the plot a little bit, but I'm willing to change my mind about it. It's not like I'm dead set on, oh, this is a terrible movie, I don't want to watch this anymore. I'm willing to change my mind on it, and I feel like that says a great deal about the quality of this movie. That it's not just one that I'm like, I don't want to watch you anymore. I don't want anything to do with this movie. I'm willing to give it a second chance.
And then the recommendation.
So yeah, as far as recommendation, I recommend this movie. If you're not into horror movies, give it a shot, because this is definitely not your typical horror movie. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm not into horror movies, but something like this I really got into. It's more of a psychological thriller in that regard. But it also has really good jokes in it too. Like, it's probably the most I've laughed at a movie too, just because the jokes from the characters, like, you don't expect them. Like, there's literally a joke in the movie about one of the characters saying, "I have the highest kill count in the family." It's like, wait, what? That's not something you would normally associate in a movie like this, but it breaks the tension and it's really good. So I'd say give it a shot. So for recommendation, I'd say I recommend it on a 7 out of 10. I figure that's a good average rate on it, because it's a movie you're going to be able to enjoy a little bit, even if you're not super into what it's about necessarily. Give it a shot. And if you're on the fence about it, at least give it a shot when it comes out on Redbox. You can rent it and watch it when you get the chance. I'd definitely say you got to at least give it a shot.
And I agree with that statement. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 as well, because for a horror movie, this is pretty tame, and it's almost kind of like a psychological horror movie. So, I mean, it's not like The Exorcist, it's not like Aliens, but it is pretty safe to watch. I mean, I actually probably wouldn't even have any problems if an 8-year-old wanted to watch it, because it's not that intense. I mean, granted, it is.
I mean, there are some intense parts in it, but it's not as bad as other movies that are gore. And it's not necessarily meant to be scary per se either. Like, it's not like It, which is like meant to be scary. It's kind of meant more to make you think and kind of say, hey, what the hell's happening here? So,
but 10 out of 10.
All right, well, that's a good solid ranking from you. All right, so I think that about wraps up our discussion on Us. As mentioned before, we apologize for the different format today. As you know, like I said, we're both sick and trying to get better. In case you didn't notice all the minor coughing we were doing throughout the episode, we apologize for that.
Well, I've been sick, and hopefully I'm better soon.
We've been sick. We know that. So, anyways, leave us a like if you enjoyed this podcast. Comment down below what your thoughts on Us were. We'd like to know what you guys thought about the movie as well. And if this is something that you enjoy listening to, consider subscribing to us, and maybe you'll catch us in the future. With that being said, I'm Ambrose.
I'm Fuzzy,
and we'll see you next time.